Hi, I'm Julie Fletcher. I'm a social worker at Teesside Hospice. I've worked here for 16 years now, and I'd like to talk to you about a few things that I come across quite frequently at Teesside Hospice for Dying Matters Week. Some things that are really pertinent and personal, I think, to all of us. The first thing that I'd like to talk about is lasting power of attorney, and having that in place is really important. And you would think that, having worked in this area in palliative care for such a long time now, that I would have had everything in place by now for such a long time. But it was actually a personal event with one of my friends whose health changed very suddenly, and she suffered a stroke. And I think for all of us, we don't know what's coming, and it's always helpful to be prepared in these situations. So I think something like a lasting power of attorney, there are two types. You can have one for health and well-being decisions, and you can have one for your finances. Most people do both now, and it's very easy to do yourself online. I think people often think it's a very difficult process and you've got to access it via solicitor, but it isn't actually. And I'm quite old-fashioned, so I printed off the forms, but most people can do them themselves online, or you can print them off and write them. It takes about an hour. You need somebody called a certificate provider, which sounds very complicated, but it's actually just like the person that would sign your passport for you. So a professional of some sort that can say that you're capacitated at the time of making your lasting power of attorney. So in these situations where any of us could lose capacity at some point, either temporarily or long term with an illness, you can appoint somebody to make decisions for you legally on your behalf. So you wouldn't get into difficulties financially if something happened to you, and somebody could manage your bills, your bank account, your housing needs, and again for your health and well-being decisions. So in my situation, I've got somebody who could make a decision around life-sustaining treatment as part of my lasting power of attorney. And that's really helpful, because I think when we do consider what we would like to happen at the end of our lives, there are certain situations that we maybe wouldn't want to have treatment. So that person who you've appointed as your attorney can make those decisions legally on your behalf. So that's a useful thing to have. But I would always say it's always important to tell somebody that you have that, and obviously your attorneys know, but let your GP know. If it's your financial lasting power of attorney, let your bank know, so that people in those services are aware, and let your attorneys know where you keep it. So sometimes people have these things in place, but you've got to have the document, you've got to have the registered document to prove you have an attorney. So always talking is really important, talking to people about what your wishes are. The other thing that's quite important to do is to think about your funeral arrangements. Again, that's something that I didn't do until fairly recently as part of my will. So making your will, in there is an area to say what your end of life wishes might be around your burial or cremation. But again, it's just letting people know what those wishes are, and also where to find your will. Even though I've done those things, I still haven't managed to put them all together somewhere. I'm hoping by the time this goes out in Dying Matters Week, I will have done that. So it's just important to have somewhere safe to keep everything, and let people dear to you know where to access them, where to find those things. There's some of the things that I've found families have found difficult. They'll say to me, I know my loved one has made a will, but I've searched high and low, I can't find it. I know my loved one would have made funeral arrangements, but I can't find them, and they've not had those conversations. So that side of things, actually talking to people or even writing something down, if that conversation feels a little bit too difficult, but just point people in the right direction to know where to find things when the time comes. And I think the final thing I'd like to talk about is something that's precious to me as well, is music is a big part of my life. There are certain pieces of music that are really special to me, and I think music has that ability to transport you to somewhere, to that memory, and to evoke those memories and those feelings that come with that. And often we hear a piece of music, think that would be perfect for my funeral, but we might not tell anybody, we might not write it down. And there is something that you can access online called Playlist for Life, and that might help you to think about times in your life when certain pieces of music might have been special to you. So if you're thinking of arranging your funeral, those pieces of music might be really helpful to let your family or your loved ones know what your wishes would be when they're arranging your funeral. And that's something that I've found families find really difficult, because they worry about whether they've got things right for you. So if you can have those conversations or write them down, I think that's always a good thing to do.